All right. Hello, everybody. We're here for another episode of Explain Yourself. We have a great creator with us tonight, Caleb Thusat, who's going to talk about his book, The Neverland. But I'm your host, Benjamin Morse. I'm here with Joey Galvez, and
What's
we're
going on?
excited to talk about this book. So,
Yeah.
Caleb, thanks for coming on the show, and give us a quick
Yeah,
pitch on your book, The Neverland.
yeah. Thanks for having me. So this is issue 4 of my Neverland series. It's basically a standalone sequel to the original Peter Pan novel, but it's about a kid growing up during a global pandemic. His mother falls ill during the pandemic, and he escapes to Neverland one night and finds that the magic is all lost from the island. And it's turns into this epic quest of him essentially figuring out what happened between that original novel and now for the magic to be lost and kind of trying to repair the magic that has been lost from the island. But
Sounds cool.
it's inspired by 80s fantasy movies and a lot of stuff that I loved growing up. I just wanted to make something for a new generation of kids and parents, and tried to make something unique and different with that mythology that we're all familiar with Peter Pan.
Yeah, that sounds like a great angle on it, which is, I'm always looking for in stories like what's the central question, or like what's the thing that's going to keep me, maybe the art looks nice, maybe the cover was cool, maybe I like the things it's playing upon or the genre, but if there's like a question that I need answered, that's what really, keeps, I think, people coming back. So it's cool. Like there have been so many people picking up these kind of, public domain, sort of
Mhm.
mythological properties. But I think that's a really cool twist on it. And I'm going to throw the campaign on screen here real quick and
Oh
make it
yeah,
full
for
screen,
sure.
so we can see some of this great art. Because I noticed you have a really nice art team on this
Oh,
book.
thanks. Yeah.
Um, really nice art, really great colors, and that's looking great. So tell us a little bit about. I guess you've done issues 1 through 3, and is this is for the end of the story, or is this just another chapter, and it's going to be a few more issues from now?
So this will be 5 issues total. We're getting to like the main meaty action goodness of this story, and so issue 4 is really like where it really ramps up. Um,
Mhm.
it's every issue basically gets better and better as far as I'm concerned, as far as the action and the reveals, and I can't wait to get through this one and everybody see the grand arc at the end. But this is 4. We've done 3 are completely finished. 4 we usually have about half of it finished with inks and pencils and stuff before we launch, and then
Mhm.
you know the Kickstarter's here to help us, fund getting the rest
Yeah.
of it finished. But Marcelo's been working with me for a long time. He's done Nook, which was released on Source Point Press last year, which is a World War II ghost story.
Mhm.
He did that with me. He did a sci-fi series called Flytrap with me, and he's doing this. And so we've been working together for many years now. We keep challenging each other to do something cooler and cooler with these books, and he never ceases to amaze me with the covers. My friend Daniel Hill did the variant on this one, but as you can
Mhm.
see on the left there, that's the actual original or the official cover by Marcelo
Mhm.
Biot, and my favorite one he's done so far. But Robert Nugent, who does the colors for us, he did the colors for this cover too. He's does a lot of stuff for Source Point Press, and he's pretty well known. He's actually just started working on Spawn Kills Every
Yeah,
Spawn,
I saw that.
so which is ridiculous. But so he's kind of like on the cusp of leaving us all behind. But but he vowed that he will finish the Neverland with us. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to have him for the at least the last 2 books before he decides to ghost us after this. No, but he's been doing the colors. He did the colors with us on Flytrap too, Marcelo and
Mhm.
myself. But you can see I pulled out some panels here, gave you a little bit of the story. And then you get the big blown up, beautiful cover that Marcel and Robert put together.
Hmm.
Went through some basic rewards, but I want to get down to show you the variant covers, which well, let me stop here for a second. So Howie Noel, who's a guy I met through doing some live shows a while ago, he's been doing these pinups for us every campaign, and they're exclusive to backers on the Kickstarter. So every time you back a single issue of Neverland, you would get one of these pinups, and it's like a collected
Hmm.
little series of cool pieces of pop art that he did for us. And there's going to be a fifth one, so it's like going to be a nice little collection of sweet art that he put together. And
Cool.
you can pick up all the old ones too on here. I tried to make it. I don't have a ton, but I want to make it available if people like that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then I have my other books. Marcella's doing some sketch covers, but you can get all of the other books that we've worked on pretty much through here. There's Marcella's other official covers for the issue 1, 2, and 3. And then I'll kind of wanted to relate what things kind of inspired my writing and story for this 80s fantasy movies, and
Hmm.
Sandman and Lock and Key. But we do an 80s fantasy film homage cover. I've been working with a few different artists for these, but Stan Yak did the first cover there for that's like the Neverending Story. Then my friend Sean Langley, who's another Ohio artist, did the Willow and Kroll covers for us. And then our new one, Daniel Hill, just blew me away with this Labyrinth
Hmm.
homage cover, which is honestly like my favorite piece of art that's come out of this series. It just it's awesome.
It is
So
really cool. So, I mean, one of the things I think is really cool about seeing all this is, and I think the thing that really popped out and kind of speaks to this point is the color being really strong. It looks like you're kind of taking we're not just continuing the story of, say, Peter Pan, or even like what you see in Hook, and really carrying it through a logical, what you'd expect would be the next stage of that story or that world. But it's kind of taken a dark turn, in that the magic is all gone and it's a little bit more adult in terms of its
mhm.
viewpoint. But I think that the color and the magic, not specifically magic, but the things that make you like that world, if you liked the Disney movie, if you liked Hook, the colors are bright and vivid. The world seems interesting, even if it's not magical per se,
Yeah,
like it used to
one of
be.
the fun things I've actually worked with Robert on when we started this series is that when he gets to the island first, I wanted to make sure that it was not the vibrant world that he's
Mhm.
familiar with. So the first issue, there's not. It's very dulled down, and then like when you get flashbacks of the original novel in there, from them him talking to Tiger Lily and stuff about what happened at the
Mhm.
island. Like you get to see that vibrant world is still there. Like here's some of the flashbacks,
Mhm.
and then as we go on with the new story, the color is kind of getting brought back to the world
I
because
see. Okay.
Percy's the main boy's character's name. He's slowly starting to bring that magic back, albeit in a different way than everyone is expecting it to be. So it's really a story that I kind of wrote with a lot of it was inspired by Neverending Story. That idea that like we're kind of losing our imagination,
Mhm.
or like kids have that loss there. And I wanted to I saw my son growing up during the pandemic and dealing with all this stuff that really kids shouldn't have to be dealing with, and he
Mhm.
was kind of growing up too fast. And I when in the middle of that, he and I were getting obsessed with Peter Pan stories, so I kept reading him books and watching shows and watching movies. And then uh, this story kind of spawned out of that. I was just like, there's a story to be told here with kids growing up too early and trying to like
Mhm.
reclaim that innocence by maybe escaping to a land where you can't grow up, you know.
Yeah.
But the tragedy is that he escapes there and it's not what he expected it to be.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the whole point of the story. It's the idea that we're living in a world that's changed, and maybe the new generation's the one that's going to kind of embrace the change and
Mhm.
get us to kind of move forward and accept that life can still be good even though it might be a little different. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think this has. I can just tell from looking at the art. It's got, I think, a lot of these things that take. This is almost too drastic an example to be, or too good an example to be relevant. But like when you look at those people taking Winnie the Pooh, but it's like a horror movie now, just kind of to be a
yeah.
little edgy and ironic. A lot of the things that where they're going to take something old and reimagine it, it goes very much the other way. Or they take some golden age character, but it's like super dark and depressing and
Oh
dingy
yeah.
and ugly. And I think this has the idealism and the good, I would say, optimism. At least not
Oh,
that
that's
there's no
yeah.
difficulties in the story, but it's what I like about what I'm seeing with this is that it's not. I think a lot of those things where it's like, well, if I like that old property, but you're giving it to me and almost subverting it completely, it's like a slap in the
Exactly.
face.
I
Whereas I
didn't
think
want
this
to do
is,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like if I like
There's
that stuff, that's all still here.
yeah, there's two things I wanted to avoid. I didn't want to just make a dark Peter Pan
Mhm.
because everybody that's like the go-to, like I'm just gonna make a dark version of whatever fairy tale this is. I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be a new story that had the heart of the original, and I wanted it to be relevant to the time that we're
Mhm.
living in. So I honestly, that's kind of how I write. I feel like if there's no purpose to the story that I'm telling, then I don't
Yeah.
have the passion behind it. So I wanted it to be something that had meaning to it.
Yeah, I think it's a good mix of that. I look at, like the last three Star Wars, the last trilogy they made. It was like the most repetitive thing, and it just
Hmm.
felt so weird and odd, and like it really empty, and that it didn't really speak to a lot of.
Yeah.
You look at the first one, you get why it was a success when it was released. It was the right move for the time, and even though it wasn't very much of the time that it was
Hmm.
made and released, it spoke to things. It fed a need that was there. It had a lot to do with it. It was a response to it, and I think that you look at the new ones, it is just so like a dull retread. It's optimistic, but it's like so cotton candy-ish because it doesn't seem to really have a point. Whereas what I like about this is it's like, all right, I'm going to take this kind of vibe I was getting during COVID, during the lockdowns when things just got a little weird, and really bring that through the lens. I think that does revitalize the property a little bit and the characters. Otherwise,
Nostalgia
you're
can be
just
tricky, man.
yeah,
Nostalgia can be a tricky thing to deal with because if you just are rehashing too much of what you've already gone over, then what's the point,
yeah,
really? Like, we you take some steps and do something new. Like, I didn't want. I first thing I did was like, this is not going to be Peter Pan. This is a story about another kid, and
mhm,
Peter Pan is actually he's not really in the story. He's they're looking for Peter Pan and they're wondering why he's gone, and you get that you get the reasons why, and
mhm,
it ties into that original story. One of my biggest inspirations for starting this was reading the original novel and just being blown away by how different it actually was from everything that I knew about Peter Pan, because any other version of Peter Pan did not really show how dark and kind of visceral the story was, and how Peter Pan is actually kind of not a hero. He's kind of an awful character in the original story. But I wanted to kind of have that inject that darkness in the original darkness that Jan
mhm.
Barry kind of put in there into here without, maybe without the racism and stuff that's originally in
Yeah.
in the
You'd probably
original
leave that out.
story. But
Well,
yeah.
well, and that's the thing. If you look at God, Never Ending Story, that got dark at points, or really sad. I mean, I think people forget that you do need those moments
Well,
to anchor your story and
and
anchor
we
your
sell
kind of the emotional journey.
we sell our audience and our children short. Like, I would say children are so pick up on things a lot more than we realize. And I wanted to
Mhm.
write this not only for kids but for parents. the parents that grew up with those stories will love this because it has that heart to it. And then I wanted to kind of give a new generation a
Mhm.
reason to have a story like that again, where because Neverending Story to me, when I was a kid, I was just like, this is a really cool adventure story. And like you remember Falcor, and you remember like the grand epic fantasy of it all. And then when you're older, you're like, Jesus, this is like a metaphysical,
Yeah.
deep story about us losing all of our imagination and creativity. And you didn't realize that when you're a kid. You don't pick up on all those things. And then I just wanted to have something that had those layers in it, and something that everyone could kind of like. You could read this if you're an adult, you can read it and enjoy it for probably an entirely different reason than a kid would pick it up and read it. But everyone can get something out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's why we go back to those old movies. I don't think it's just nostalgia per se. It's those had a lot of depth. Those were like movies that were made for kids in that time period, which of
Oh
course when I was
yeah.
growing up,
Oh my God.
they had depth. They're not just like I don't think people revisit them or regard them as classics because we grew up with them. There was layers to that. There was, and even when there weren't, I look at Transformers the movie, which was not Citizen Kane or anything exactly, but I think that stuck with people, and that I think that's been kind of the prime, pun not intended, '80s franchise because of that movie. Because everyone like went to see this movie, and
Yeah.
Optimus Prime died, and it was horrible, and it was scary, and it was just like such a memorable, vivid thing to happen that no other franchise did. And I think everyone remembers seeing it, and it just kind of gets you on a different level.
Yeah,
While
man.
that was, I don't think they would have even done that again in the way they did it initially, and they undid it quickly. But the fact that they went there and gave us that really what in God's name is happening moment is what makes the rest of the story work. Makes you like, wow, anything can happen here. This is disturbing.
Yeah.
There's an adult or a sort of a growing up, getting used to something else aspect to that I think really gets under your skin and stays with you. And I think this is playing with those things really intelligently. When I was trying to put together both of my series, one's kind of an '80s sci-fi throwback, and one is kind of a golden age comic book, sort of done in a modern style. It was really something I concentrated on to like really say, hey, here's the thing I think people came here to see. Here's what people are going to like about this visually,
Mhm.
in terms of story conventions, in terms of pacing. But there's also got to be other stuff. There's got to be a reason to come back to it while giving them all those things they came for in an interesting way. That's not just like, crapping on it. And you're saying like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
comics were silly or those old stories were dumb and we're making fun of it because we're much cooler than them. And I think this really, there's a lot of earnestness in this, even though it does kind of go in a not necessarily darker, but a different direction, a more mature direction.
Yeah, I wanted to you have all those characters that you're familiar with. I like making things that they're familiar, but they're definitely different. So I wanted to give you those characters, but they've been through something that we haven't seen, and you kind of get
Mhm.
those reveals throughout the issues. Like, is Hook all? Why is he even alive? Because really, the original book, he actually gets eaten by the crocodile at the end
Mhm.
of the book, and that's like you don't get in cartoon Peter Pan. He just runs away on the water, right? Like he's running away from,
I
from the
think so. I
croc,
don't know.
and
I
it's
haven't
just
seen
like
that in so long.
it's like it's just kind of silly, and like it's him running away. But I love Hook, and I love Neverending Story. I love Willow. I love those epic stories where you kind of meet these quirky, fun characters along the path. Kroll was definitely like that too. And I wanted you have a reveal of those cool, quirky characters, but there's definitely a vast difference in what their history has changed quite a bit. Tinkerbell is not the Tinkerbell we know. It's like a dark shadow of Tinkerbell, but there's still that familiarity of the world and the characters, and
Mhm.
you know the history enough, even if you don't know the original book, you know the history enough to
Yeah,
to be
everybody's
familiar with this.
really familiar with those characters in that world,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think I think that's something that people don't pay a lot of attention to in writing or even just criticizing stories. not criticizing in a negative sense, but just talking about them, whether they like them or they dislike them, is the space between stuff. Like when
Hmm.
I'm actually going to jump from like the first story I've done for my character August to like the last story 50 years later, because partially just because I had more ideas for that one, but the more I thought about it, I was like, to just put him in a very different situation 50 years later really just activates all that space in between in a way that
No, I
like
love that.
is going to make everything a lot more interesting.
To
You
me,
you
that's
have to
what
kind of
made
know.
Star Wars Star Wars.
Yeah.
They just threw you into it, and you're like, "What? And what world is this? And who are these people?" And you just kind of have to like, you're just part of it, and you have to figure it out as it goes.
Yeah. And the
I
things
love
they
that.
never explained or showed until they, ended up doing them, they were so much cooler when you
Oh
just
yeah, oh
imagined what the
yeah.
Clone Wars were, what this was like, what that was like. And I don't, not to knock it exactly, those movies, they, I think, have a little more integrity than the newer ones in a lot of ways. But eh, everything that they just alluded
No,
to in the
yeah.
first one, you're like, oh my God, that must have been so cool. And you had it in your head,
I
which
like
is,
I like that. Yeah, like I love Star Wars, and like I'll take what I can get, and I enjoy it for what it is. But
mhm.
you're definitely right. Like, there's nothing like those original moment where you just like have Obi-Wan Kenobi talking about the Clone Wars, and you're just like, what the, like
Yeah,
this, all
that
this
must have been great.
history, like what is crazy? Like I want to know more about this stuff, and it's like that's one of those hard things where it's like then everyone has expectations, right? So when it
Mhm.
actually is revealed, you never really know how it's
Yeah.
going to turn out for an audience.
Yeah.
So
But
I give I tried to give you bits and pieces of that in between the book and now, but I don't give you everything. I give you why Hook is here, and I give you the most important parts. But I still like I want to have some imagination mixed in there, and some I want kids and
Mhm.
parents to be like, oh, what else? Like, what happened to Smee? He's all gnarled up and stuff. You don't necessarily see all that, and it's like, well, he's been through some crap. Like,
yeah. Well,
but
and that's
it's
where your
fun.
mind goes to work. I think that's there was a description on one of the extras for the Batman 1989 movie, and they were talking about the logo they did, which was a little more complicated than the bat symbol as it had appeared previously. Like it had this extra set of points on the wings, I think specifically on the bottom. And the guy was said like at first I didn't like it. I was like, is that like tonsils or something? Like it was a little too complicated. It didn't instantly read as the bat symbol to him. And then he thought, and he was explaining it to, he's like, but every time we tested it, it did really well, and people were very engaged with it. And I think it's because he had to just wake your mind up a little bit to understand what it was, like in a slight way. Not that it was difficult or it was a lot of
Mhm.
work, but your brain just had to do a little bit, a millisecond of work
Yeah,
to sort of figure it out, and then you're slightly invested in it. And I think that's a thing people don't
nice.
really concentrate on in constructing their stories. I think you can leave a lot mysterious as long as you're giving the reader, I think, enough to basically promise them you're going to get a good resolution to this. I'm
Hmm.
aware of how much I'm leaving in the mystery box, so to speak, because I'm giving you a few other things that can really work. And I think that's what connects us to stories and characters. If your pacing is good, you really activate people's brains and draw them in a little bit without just it's not shock value and it's not empty
Yeah.
promises, but it's hitting the right notes there. And I think this really delivers like the kind of experience you want if you liked Hook. If you loved the Peter Pan cartoon,
Oh
you don't
yeah.
want to just watch it again. You don't want to watch a really bad. They tried to bring one back, I think, a few years ago with
Mhm.
the guy from Tron was Captain Hook, but he was a good guy, and I think Blackbeard was the bad guy. It was like
Yeah.
going back to it, but it was a little bit of a it wasn't right. It wasn't the right experience that you want if you want to go back to that world. And I think this kind of
Yeah.
is the right experience for that.
And even Disney's new Peter Pan and Wendy, I was like, I watched it with my son because we're still on the Peter Pan stuff,
Mhm.
and like, it's fine. It's fine. It's again, it's retelling the original story though, so
Mhm.
it's not doing anything that we don't know.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of a twist and turn with with who Hook is in relation to Peter Pan, but like outside of that, it's basically the cookie cutter story that we're all familiar with. So I was just like, it's fine, right? Like newer generation, maybe they need a different version of everything, but
Mhm.
that's I mean, that basically seems to be Disney's formula.
Oh yeah, those things they
If it's been over 20 years, we need to make it again so that the new kids have a new version of the same thing. But
yeah, but a much worse. I don't think any. God, we tried to watch that Little Mermaid the other week. That was weird. The crab looked so bizarre. I can't
it,
imagine that anyone thought that was a good
I
idea.
I honestly don't understand the desire for everyone to switch everything from animation to live action. To
Yeah,
me, it should be the other way around. Like we should be having more animated movies because honestly, if you're going to tell a lot of these stories, they work better animated than they
yeah.
do
Oh,
live action.
100%. Well, and I think it gets a little bit to what I was saying about the story aspects earlier, and leaving a little bit to the imagination, or making the
Oh
viewer
yeah, yeah,
reader
yeah,
like think a little bit. When you examine that from the visual aspect, that's what cartoons do. They give you a lot more of the character of these. Lion
hmm
King is the example I'm thinking of. They're not obviously super accurate lions in the sense that the CG ones and the one they did a few years ago was, but it's the character of that person comes through very clearly in the way they
You mean the
exaggerate.
live action Lion King? The
Yeah,
live,
yeah.
yeah.
Where Scar just like wasn't cool at all. He's like my favorite too.
It's so weird. Such a weird.
That was
We're
weird.
watching live, quote unquote, live action movies that are all CGI. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well, it's animated. It's just animated
it
in
was
a way.
just such a weird experience. I'm like, you got used to it after a while, and then I think actually
It
I'm glad
lost its
you got
heart
on
though
this.
because
Yeah.
the cartoon you can have more emotion and more reaction in those faces, and when you put
Yes.
those faces on a live action animal, it just doesn't. It's weird. It
There's
just
some
doesn't work.
room with a cartoon drawing to work with your brain a little bit to interpret that. It's a impressionist. It's not impressionistic, in the sense of like paintbrushes everywhere, but or brushstrokes everywhere. But it's impressionistic in the sense it's not. You get to decide a little bit of how you feel about that. Whereas when you look at the sort of Discovery Channel looking lions fighting each other, there's not a lot.
Yeah,
There's no magic there. There's no work where as a kid you're connecting what you're seeing, the drawings you're seeing, with the real thing that exists in the world. There's not that space between, and the space between is what really makes that happen. I look at different artists drawing Superman, for instance, and I think the ones that do it best actually just don't draw that much on him, don't draw too many shadows or lines or features even on his face. They leave it pretty open, and you can kind of fill in your favorite version of Superman to some extent. It's not necessarily, some people love the Alex Ross version where he's really old and he kind of looks like a face on Mount Rushmore. Other people like, Christopher Reeve, who's really, like a very different vibe. And I think you look at something like Bruce Timm's version of the character, which is really simple. You can
hmm
see Schuster in there if you really want to see it. He can play all those different parts that the character kind of needs to, because they just don't nail everything down. And I think that's really a smart way to approach things that we have pre-existing connections to, which
yeah.
is, that's kind of where you're living and breathing here with this story. And I think that's pretty smart.
Well, thanks.
With that said, I got a question. So, I see that this is your 22nd or 23rd Kickstarter. So how is it different from number one till now? Like, especially with marketing this thing.
um, I have a following, so that makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
When I first got on doing this, I worked in film for about 8 years prior, and we had run one Kickstarter for film. So that was basically my knowledge, and I didn't really have a social media following. I didn't really have an online presence, honestly. So it was me begging friends and family to get that first issue made, essentially, just to get things moving. And that was like on a weird sci-fi series that I did called Alter Life, which had a bit of a niche audience to start with. But now I have like pushing a 10,000 person mailing list, and I have 22 campaigns of backers that essentially I get 1 to 200 that return every time. So that makes it a little easier just because I can start the ball rolling quite simply with that. And then there's things that you always have to do. You do as many shows as you can do as with the energy that you have. You do as much social media pushing as you can without being too obnoxious. But it's just been years of building that following that makes the difference, because people don't realize that mostly what Kickstarter is you bringing your audience to the Kickstarter that you're running. The people that find it on Kickstarter, it's very small percentage of who's backing your stuff. It's really you're bringing the audience to the table. Granted, there's things like sexy books and stuff that are going to do good just because there's a lot of people on there looking for that stuff, which is fine. But it's like books like this, you kind of have to know you're going to have some people helping you kind of get things moving. And it's, and on all honesty, it's still a bit of a struggle for some of the books that I run. When I run a horror book, it's pretty simple. Like there's a pretty solid audience for that. I ran my Strange Stories campaign last in the summer, and it was in the dead of summer. Like people don't think, people even say, well, why run a Kickstarter in the middle of summer? Like no one's going to be paying attention. But that overfunded like crazy, and I barely had to do anything because it was between my following and just being like a horror anthology, it just had the backers there. But something like this, it's like fantasy, it's Peter Pan, it's a fairy tale. It's like it's a bit of a niche audience, especially on Kickstarter. So it's a bit of a struggle. Anything that's kind of more geared towards kids, like a lot of people are going to think that this is more geared towards kids, even though it's really for everybody. And honestly, it's more for adults than it is for kids. But like, it's just hard to fund stuff. I have a kids series, Super Cats. I honestly might not be doing that on crowdfunding anymore because it's so much of a struggle to get the parents of the reader to buy the book for the reader. You're not selling it to the person that's buying it on Kickstarter. You're selling it to the person that that's going to read it to the kid. So it's like it's difficult. Yeah. And I've seen it with other people that have in comics trying to do kid stuff. It's not easy. A lot of times if you have like a plushie or something, it makes it easier, but it's every campaign is its own beast. And honestly, this time of year, there's a lot of stuff on there too. There's like almost 300 comic book campaigns running right now. It's like, that's a lot to choose from. So you never know. You do it 20 times and you still see new things. So you can never really pin it down 100%. You just got to keep doing whatever it takes to get it funded.
I think that's true. You like, I've always said that one thing doesn't work for every single campaign, and you can have an issue 1 and an issue 4, and it can do something completely different. It's the same series, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's changed, and it can do something different. And that's true. Every single Kickstarter is different, and I don't think one thing works. You have to figure out how it's going to work when you're actually running it. That's the only way that you can figure out if this thing's going to fund or not is when you're in the middle of that thing. And that's the one thing that people don't really realize. I think you had hit it on the nail there, where on the head there, that where you said your base, grow your base, right? And I think I might disagree just a little bit where you're talking a little bit about bringing your own base, right? I think that's great, right? But for somebody who hasn't started or has never created a Kickstarter, I think helping grow your base is a better focus rather than trying to figure out, okay, well, I need to bring my base over. I think you need to grow your base first in order to bring it over with you when you do stuff, right? Because when you grow that base, you think about it like a family, right? Your family, you hit them up, you say, hey, I'm doing this thing, right? And they all back you no matter what. They're gonna throw money at it because it's you. That's the kind of base that you want to create is a base where they're going to just throw money at it because it's you. And the way you do that is by throwing money at other people just because it's them. So that's one of those things is that you got to do is it's kind of this give and take thing. And you got to make sure that you insert yourself into the community and you be amazing, right? It's just be awesome.
Well, and I think that something you said about just more fundamentally, the awareness you have in I'm trying to build an audience, I'm trying to build a base. I've heard a lot of people talk about that. But I mean, I've looked at other people going with like really high goals or, just really ambitious projects at the outset. When I was starting Scarlet Twilight, I was like, I'm just gonna do one issue. I want to keep the costs as low as I can and still make sure I'm just not going to lose money. Because I just was like, this is the first time I've done this. I don't have a huge following on any necessarily one social platform. And my whole goal was just like, hey, I want to build this on Kickstarter, bring people into the story and more generally just into my work. But that was the goal, really, was to just make it as easy as possible for people to do what I hope they'll do. And I think that's something that when I've talked to people, or especially when I've seen posts of people really being frustrated, saying, oh, I'm shouting into the void, but they just keep shouting into the void instead of thinking like, could I plan this differently? Could I get help on this part of my project from somebody else? Could I even just reach out to somebody for help and say, hey, I'm hitting a brick wall here. Keep trying something different until you find what works. You don't need to bang your head against the wall over and over again. But I think that comes from having realistic goals. And I think the right goals for where you're at in your status within the community, with what the books you produced, and with the audience you've built. And it sounds like you're a really good example of somebody who's done that and I think been paying attention to that at every step.
Absolutely, man. Actually, one of the most recent things I did last year was I started a group. It's kind of a little bit of a private group. We share it as much as we can, but it's basically we do cross promotion for each other for Kickstarter, and it started as just like a Facebook group, but now it's like this weird chat. Like we just have this ongoing chat that just is forever. And like basically I tell people it's like just mute it when you're not running a campaign, but if you are getting close to one, bring it back, because like it's just like an ongoing conversation, like, hey, helping each other out with all the aspects of Kickstarters and
Is
stuff.
that what's been going off on my phone over here somewhere?
But it's like, it's seriously been a vital resource, because we have, if there's 10 people in that group running Kickstarters at the same time, we're all cross promoting during updates. We're sharing on social media when people are struggling. It's just, or if you're just like mentally at wit's end with running the campaign, which everyone gets to that point. It's about between week 2 and week 3, if you're running a month one. Yeah, everyone gets to that low point where they're just like, okay, I'm at a brick wall. Like, what can I do? Like, I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna give up. And then you can jump in this chat and just be like, hey, can you guys shout out for me? Or just like, maybe one of those guys will just throw in for helping out like the digital for a day, just because you're having a slow day with no backers or something. And it's like just enough to get you kind of that motivation back and get you the ball rolling again, because it's even a slog. Like I was telling you guys, like I've done 3 of these campaigns and they all went pretty smooth, and then this 4th one kind of is just like slowly chugging along, and I'm like, it's
a tough time. It's just a tough time.
And I'm like, this is a rough time, but it'll get there. Like I know, but I should know better, because I've done so many of them that just like the uptick from this point will be fine. But it's just you just get in your head, and that group that I created kind of helps us with that.
Well, I think there's something to be said for that, not just in terms of morale or direct assistance, like you're talking about with getting shout outs of stuff, but like, I've been watching a lot of streams ever since I started doing Kickstarters, just to see what people are doing, what works, what doesn't. And I mean, there was a time, like just for example, where Facebook ads were, I think, getting like 10-to-1 returns for people. It was a really good idea. Now, by the time I heard that, that was not the case anymore. But, I think if people are talking a lot more, you're going to figure out that thing the next time whatever it is happens, and more people will be able to take advantage of it, which I think is going to grow their audiences individually, and also just grow the more people that get used to buying comic books this way, I think the better we're all going to do. That's the big thing. There's such a I look at even switching from Kickstarter to Zoop, and there's so many people that are like, there are a lot of people that were like, oh, I'm sorry, I just don't want to go over to Zoop for whatever reason, which I can respect. And there are people that are just like, I hate Zoop so much. And I'm like, what did Zoop do to you, dude? This is crazy. But there's a resistance to just doing anything new. Not necessarily for a dramatic reason or they've been done wrong or whatever is in their heads, but just to ask somebody to do something new. Oh, I got to sign up for an account here. I don't want to do that.
That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I've been doing Kickstarter enough that it used to be that I had to have in my Kickstarter how to back a Kickstarter. Like I would put it in the bottom of the thing. Like, if you want to back this project, this is what you should do. Like, just because people weren't familiar with the platform, and it was just like I wanted to make sure that I'm not begging for money here. If you don't want the book, don't buy it. But this is me making a product, and it's become basically a publisher's front for making comic books. And honestly, if nothing else shows that it's valid, the fact that so many publishers have come to the platform to sell books because it makes more sense to test an audience here than it does selling in a comic book store.
Now, if we could get those big, huge publishers to at least, do a cross promotion with some smaller Kickstarter campaigns that are not going to automatically hit 30K.
I tried to get actually to do it when he did.
Or not even, or listen, let's. I'll put a specialized tier for 50 cents for them to back it, so that all of their people that are following them can see that they backed my campaign at 50 cents.
That's actually something I've never realized before. People have, we've talked about this, I think, a bunch of times, but everybody's like, how do you feel about like the Boom putting the Power Rangers on there, or some of the bigger? My answer has always been like, it does smell wrong to me. It does feel a little weird, but also I think the more people that are willing to go over, they've signed up for Kickstarter. It's easier for them to back the next book next time.
Listen,
they feel like
if somebody can show me a receipt that they promoted their Kickstarter, then I'll say I'm cool with them being on the platform.
That's something that they absolutely should be doing.
My only issue is when you get big names and big people with big followings that don't deliver products on crowdfunding, or it takes them like an extra 2 years, and people are just like, I don't want to buy crap on Kickstarter. Well, like what's that doing to the platform? It's actually hurting it at this point. So it's like, I'm happy if anybody gets on there to bring an audience, but you have to deliver your product. You can't, make sure you do your research and give the backers what they paid for, There shit happens sometimes. Let's be honest, like problems happen, but you still have to be honest and communicate and just not disappear into the ether of everything, right? So,
and when you say stuff happens, that's true. And it's more true for smaller creators or newer creators. But when it's a bigger name that doesn't deliver a project, and there have been a lot of them, people that came out of the mainstream. And
don't be the guy that shit on somebody's chest either. Don't be that guy either. Don't be a dick and call them out in public. All I'm saying is.
No, I'm just saying, like, when you have bigger creators do that, there's just these guys know how to put out a comic book. It's not a mystery. There's not some, I never thought that you had to do that. Like, you knew how to do this.
Yeah. I don't want to scare people from the platform, though, man. Like this is the reason I can make comics. So when someone tells me that, when I actually had some backers this campaign message me and be like, I'm done with buying stuff on Kickstarter, and I'm not backing yours this time because I'm just done with it. And I'm like, well, that sucks, because I know it wasn't me, because I sent you the books. I got the files to prove it, man. But it's just so it sucks, but they had this happening. So
I mean, depending on how that's phrased, I've had a few people do that through different aspects of campaigns. And I've always felt like if they're reaching out to tell me that, I can probably get them back. You know, like they want
Yeah,
some
yeah.
attention. They want some like, I'm sorry this happened to you, but I'm not gonna, you know, like whatever. But that
Yeah.
obviously
Then
that's something the people that don't say anything to you about that. That's what I worry about.
that's when
Um,
you slide them your email, or you slide them that link to your store of your website so
yeah,
that they can buy
that
directly
too,
from
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just be like, well, when it's finished, here's my PayPal.
you, right? I'll give you an exclusive deal, man. We'll hit you up with the
Yeah.
first one
Yeah.
each time. For real. Yeah. I wanted to ask another question about marketing and stuff, man. Is so how, and I know it's not I know you have the kids books and all this stuff. So
Mhm.
how are you go switching the marketing from that? Because you did mention a little bit, you have to with kids books and kids and that world, you're selling to the parents, and then this you're kind of selling the story and selling like the products and things like
Mhm.
that. How are you how do you switch from the two, and how do you see the differences between the two for doing it through direct market
Yeah.
and then doing this in the Kickstarter?
So it's hard. I haven't really got it down for the kids stuff. I'm still kind of toying with it because honestly, my kids books sell better than anything else that I have when I'm in person.
I gotta tell you,
It's
I own them all, honestly, because I'm serious. They're in there, and my kids love them, and so it's
That's
worth it.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, and they're hitting Scout Comics picked them up. They're hitting like nationwide
Mhm.
Simon Schuster distribution next month. So it's like I'm excited to see what they do with it because the reason I really wanted to get those signed on somewhere is because I don't know enough about selling the kids books. Because when I got into this, like it was just me learning how to sell the comics.
Mhm.
And so it was like sci-fi and horror and stuff like that. So it was basically when I was like, hey, let's make a kids book, I basically just hit the reset button when I did that because it was like 90% of the people that had backed my stuff before did not come to back kids books. So they just didn't. Um, so I was rebuilding an audience and I didn't rebrand. Village Comics is Village Comics because one of my idols is Neil Gaiman and he writes everything, right? He writes kids books, he writes dark horror stuff, he writes everything. And I'm like, there's no reason to like have a different. I'm not going to be Caleb that writes this and some other guy that writes that. I'm not going to rename myself. So I was like, how am I going to do this? So basically, to do the Supercat stuff, I had to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, well, let's ask friends and families to help with this. And then I started reaching out to just like educators I knew and bookshop owners and stuff that might be interested in carrying kids books or having me in for like readings and stuff like, hey, if you come back for a retailer tier, I'll come do a signing or something at your bookshop. And
Mhm.
it's like it's honestly just a lot more work to get those kids books funded on crowdfunding because you have to do all of that other stuff. You can't expect the people scrolling through Kickstarter to be the ones looking for super cats. So it's hard. It helps to have someone like Angela Odling doing the art because really that sells it to older people just because they want the books because the art looks great. It's fun. It's whimsical. It's a lot of people love just that cuteness that she creates with the world. And the funny thing is, I did coloring books. Those things sell faster than anything that I have because it's that
Hmm.
art and everyone buys them. Like the adults buy them and then the kids want them too. So it's like,
Do you
Mhm.
do those as
it's
add-ons to a campaign, or do you just sell those separately,
I
completely, the coloring
started
books?
them as an add-on, but now they're actually going to be part of the box set thing that Scout's
Okay.
releasing it in October. So it's like you're going to get like the full how to read with you basically learn to read with comic books through Super Cats, and then you get the coloring
Mhm.
book thrown in as a little bonus. But
Very
yeah, I did that as like an add-on. I think during like the third or fourth book, and then I did like a remastered version on the last one we did, and expanded it and add all kinds of more fun stuff to color. And then Scout was like, "Hey, why don't we do that too because coloring books sell, man. And I'm like, yeah, they do. I'm out of them. So,
Well, I was wanting to do that for my for August campaign because it's kind of an 80s throwback. It's a combination of like all the 80s cartoons and Star Wars and things I liked as a kid. And I had a plan for a coloring book and you did a cover. And I just couldn't. I'm like, I got to get a whole nother book printed up. The margins are going to be really thin on this as it is because it's just a tough time to launch a book. So I didn't pull the trigger on it. But I'm starting to wish I had.
The beauty of the coloring books, man, is this is a lot cheaper to print because it's just all black and white. And I even made the cover coloring book, so it was like black and white from front to back. So it's like cost effective.
I should have flipped the coin the other way, I guess.
It's still there. It's still coloring books will still sell. I promise you.
Very cool.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So, I mean, I love seeing a book like this because like I said before, I think this really, obviously you've got backers who've been with the story for the first 3 issues, who I hope are invested. But I think this is I see there's so much Cthulhu, there's so much Wizard of Oz, there's so much Peter Pan, what have you. I think this, and then a lot of those are really good. And I think I'm not pointing those negative examples, but there's so much of it. And I think this is a really good example of reinterpreting that in a way that gives you what you want if you're into it, but also you're not just getting a reimagining that's just a little bit different artwork, a little bit edgier characters, but not substantially different. I think this is a really good way to approach something like this, to give you enough mystery and also everything you loved about what, Peter Pan or any of this stuff before.
And here's the beauty of this. I have the first issue on the Kickstarter page. You can click the link and you can read the first issue for free. You can read the whole first issue. I'm confident enough that if you like this type of story and you read this, you're going to want to read the rest of it. Like, it's the way that I made this story, that first one gives you enough mystery and magic that you're just going to be like, okay, I'm in for this. Like, I need to see where this goes. So I was like, we're at number 4. I think we can let people read the first one and it's not going to give away too much without, we're not going to ruin the story, but we're definitely going to inspire some backers to want to come be a part of this.
Cool. Yeah, I think you're an example of somebody who's, I think, taking the right approach, at every turn. You've got the right attitude towards building an audience, the right attitude towards really, like, all comes down to, I got some really great sales advice from my business partner when I was like 20. And he said, like, he was the guy at our studio that always was out there making the sales, thinking up the projects, going with clients and stuff like that. And he said, it really just comes down to, how can I make it easy for them to do what I hope they'll do? And I think that's something I think about every time I'm doing a campaign or put stuff together. It's easy to lose track of that. It sounds deceptively simple, but if you apply that to every step, and I think, by putting issue 1 out there during this campaign, you're making it as easy as possible for somebody to take one more step towards backing this campaign, which is that's exactly what you got to do.
Thanks. Yeah, man, I'm trying. I feel like once you break the 20 mark, you should better have figured something out by now. Or else what am I doing here?
I hope so. Yeah, I think you have. Cool. So everybody watching this, if you're watching it now or you're going to watch it later this week, check out the link in the description. You can get the campaign page. You can check out issue 1. You can check out all the great artwork, all the great extras, and I hope you'll give this book a shot. It's really cool.
Yep. Very cool.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me and let me talk about all the crazy turns of Kickstarter, man. It's been a trip.
No, it's good to hear. I learn a lot too. So hey, it's all good. Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
So I think we're going to talk a little bit, and Caleb, you can stick around if you want, but we're going to talk about some other books that are live right now or upcoming. I'll throw it over to you, Joey.
Yeah. For right now, I've got a couple of ones. I don't know if you have the links over there. I don't think I shot them over to you. My bad. But first, I want to talk about Territory. Territory is, let me see, I have it pulled up on my side over here, but I'm off now because I was looking at Caleb's and I'm not prepared because I was looking at his book. So anyway, Territory is a book about kaiju. You guys like kaiju, right?
Oh, nice.
Everyone
my
does.
my buddy Blake McCarthy, he's got a book out called Territory. He's got 4 issues out right now, and he's kickstarting these 4 first issues here. And so it's the 4th installment of a 5-issue mini that he's doing. This is going to be 22 pages of a post-apocalyptic kaiju story set in a far distant Pacific Northwest of the United States, where the ancestors tell a story where civilization was wiped from the earth in a nuclear fire long ago, and basically what happens is after that happens, the animals just grow out of this crazy nuclear fire, right? And they grow into these big, huge, crazy looking kaiju. And
Nice.
he's got some really great looking artwork here from a handful of really great artists. He's got one from Chris Sassman, and he's got this really gorgeous looking one from Mars Attacks here. This gorgeous looking neon cover here that we were looking at now. And it's what's really cool about this campaign is he's really leaning in towards the neon colors. So what he's doing is he's got a black light activated glow metal cover, and he's going to be doing that really cool looking neon cover. And that thing looks so bad. But yeah, this is the first one up. I just wanted to talk about here. Very, very cool stuff. This is one of the projects that we are affiliated with. So I just want to let you guys know that we are working together with these guys running this campaign here. And we are about about a couple weeks left. We got 11 days left. He's almost close to 3,000. He's got a $4,000 goal.
Oh, nice.
So
this is a good spot.
Really gorgeous looking book here. He's been around the block for a little bit. He's done four different. This is his 4th campaign now. This is going to be his most successful campaign if we can get it past the goal. We already have more backers than he's ever had in any campaign here, which is really cool. So this is one that we really, really want to get across the finish line. So 11 days left to help this one get across that finish line and hit some of these stretch goals.
I would say bag it, because it's gonna get there. It's gonna get there. 11 days. Yeah. You got this.
Yeah, this one's gorgeous looking, and there's no way that this one can. We got another one here that is called Stay Cool. This one's from another one that we are working with as a Canadian fella that we know. His name is Adriano, and he's got this book called Stay Cool. What this one is about is it's about a detective. She goes investigates this black site, this science lab spot, right? And this black ops kind of spot and a black site, and they, for some weird reason, her colleagues start to burst into flames, into spontaneous combustion, and so she has to figure out what's going on with this, and she has to do this before time runs out. So it's really gorgeous looking book too. Crazy looking interiors. Couple different really fun looking covers here. This one is already funded, so everybody who is going to back this one is going to be getting the books. So really cool looking stuff here.
Man, Adriano back in over 500 campaigns. That's
he is a super backer. He doesn't play games.
The super backer. Are you
he doesn't play games with this stuff, man. Yeah, he really loves this, and then this is one of those things where I was talking about, if you really want people to back you take care of the community too. And this guy knows what he's doing when it comes to that.
I would say that's one of the things I've been doing is you set aside a little nugget of money and just back as many things as you can while your campaign's going. Say, hey, you want to do a shout out? I'll do a shout out for you, and you all help each other.
Yeah, we're
rising tide,
right? You can work that into the budget if you can.
Oh yeah. Put $100 will get you a long way if you just digital everybody, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's what it's all about, right? Just drop $1 on there. Everybody,
exactly.
You got $100.
Just
hit
it helps.
100.
it helps boost those numbers. It helps show that more people are backing stuff and into things.
Exactly. And it hits all your followers and lets them know that you're
Yeah.
backing this one too.
I mean, honestly, I'm all digital nowadays anyway, so that's
Yeah.
how I consume comics these days. But yeah, it's easy to do.
The Orchard. This one really needs some help here. This is a brand new creator, brand new. This is their first campaign, and it was a $5,000, $200 goal. They're only $273 in on this one, and it's 13 days to go. This one's follows a handful of super powered people, and this facility called the Orchard kind of wants to oppress them, right, and kind of like take advantage of them and their powers. So this is kind of them. This is kind of like think of like New Mutants, right? And like that movie that they dropped out when they were in the like have to escape this place. Think of something like that. So this is the Orchard. Got some really cool looking covers, really great looking tiers and stuff there, but they need some help on this one because they've only got 13 days to go, and they got quite a ways that they're only about 5% funded on this one. And they're a great group, and this is their first campaign, but they are, that's one of those things where it's really hard, right? You don't have much of a following.
Hard, right?
Hard to
The
get.
trickiest thing is that first breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
It honestly might be one of those things. Get as much as you can now, and if you have to hit that reset button, then you got those people that you can just build the snowball, man. Like that's the best you can do. And 13 days, it's going to be a trip to get that, but it's not. I've not seen it. I've seen people raise that in a couple days,
right?
Too.
Yeah.
So
you
never know.
Miracle. We can get a Kickstarter miracle, right?
Yeah, this is a book that should be doing a lot better. I love this cover image. Those character sketches are really sharp. I think the interior art's pretty solid. And
this is a book that really should be funny because of the synopsis, right? And the way that this is kind of gives you this feel of like this kind of like a New Mutants kind of world. That at least the movie, in the movie plot where they're stuck in that asylum. So this is kind of gives you that feel, right? And I think they just need a little bit of help on that one. That's all we got live right now, but we do have a handful that are be coming up. We have one from Band of Bards that is going to be dropping called you guys have seen their anthology that they did from the Static. They dropped it out in the direct market. They also did another Kickstarter, but they had a situation where there was some mistake pages that were printed. So and unfortunately they had to, it was a big mistake. So now they've corrected those pages and they're going to be running back another campaign. And this one's going to have a little bit more of a premium look to it. It's going to have some metal covers, some brand new covers, and some really good looking holofoil covers and metal covers and standard covers. Very cool stuff. They're still talking behind the scenes on what they're going to kind of bring out for everybody, but it's going to be a really fun campaign.
Cool. Is there a pre-launch for that up, or is that still in the planning stage?
Yeah, there is a pre-launch for that. Okay. It is From the Static. It's called From the Static, a horror anthology from Band of Bards. I don't see if I have it's geekcollective.net/bards. So if you want to go there, and then so that's one there if we want to, if everybody wants to check that out. It's just a pre-launch page up right now. Sorry, I didn't send you all the links to these.
No worries. They're not that hard to find.
And
and I remember this. They use the same font I did for Scarlet Twilight. I remember this one.
Right. And then we got another one called Incident Report. This one's geekcollective.net/ADM comics. Incident Report 1 through 3. This is another like there's a really fun little theme that's going on right now in Kickstarter with these different kinds of takes on the superhero genre. This is another kind of super powered kind of people, but this is more of like a grounded kind of feel where super powered people aren't really, they don't go out and like save people or fly around and do things. They actually just have regular everyday jobs, but they just happen to have superpowers, right? So that one's
Nice.
up right now. That one's up for pre-launch as well.
Nice.
And then we've got one for pre-launch from our friends over at Oneshi Press. It's called Cohorts. It's also an anthology. Um, and this one, I should probably know a lot more about this one, but they just launched it up not too long ago. But they've this is their 13th anthology, successful anthology. And it's 17 short comics from a diverse amount of creators from all over the world, cohorts. So this is one that they got in pre-launch as well right now. This is a really cool one. And then in Oneshi Press, they put out all kinds of really great stuff. They're
Oh
always
yeah,
running
I've gotten some of their anthologies before. It's good stuff.
good stuff. Yeah. And then another one that that we're involved, both me and Ben are running. This one is Don't Push the Red Button. And this is a really cool anthology that our buddy Oscar Osorio is running. He's got a handful of really great looking creators that are behind this one. It's a 100-page anthology where the idea is, if you were offered to press a red button and win a lot of money, but one person would have to die, would you press that button? So that's what kind of within this anthology. There's going to be 11 different stories from all kinds of different creators. We got Mario from he does, what does he do? He does all kinds of different stuff. Let me pull this up. Let me go behind the scenes here so I can give you guys all the creators that we have. Here we have a really gorgeous looking cover from Francesca Fantini. And then we also have another cover that's going to be coming from Liana Kangas as well. So we have Travis Gibb and his team. He's got Jerome and Gambit and his wife doing some editing there. We got Mario Candelaria on this one. So many different great creators. Marcus Anasso, Ignacio Del Miglio is on here. We got Leonardo Nicholas Nieto, Dan Brady, and I'm gonna mess everybody's names up because they're all really awesome names. But check it out. You guys want to go and check this one out because it's a really cool looking campaign here, and the synopsis to the story was freaking cool. Even I submitted a story, but he was like, you know what, I'm not gonna pick you because you're helping me with this thing. No, I'm just kidding. He could only, there was literally there was hundreds of people who like submitted stories to this, and he could not cut it down to like 11, so he really had to pick 11. So I think what he did was he picked everybody, but he just said, this is volume 1. He's not telling me. This is just me assuming because of the conversations that we had on the back end. But I think he like picked everyone, and he's got like his volumes set out. So because he did mention to be about a volume 2. So so
Nice.
there could be there possibly could be a volume 2 in the works.
Well, let's hope this goes well then.
Yeah, we got 24 followers now, so make sure that we do this. And it's actually underneath our Kickstarter page. So people, please make sure that this one gets funded so that it looks like that we're doing a good job, please. So, and we are, and I have to credit Benjamin because he's really coming through on this one as well, helping me take some of the workload off of my back on that one too. So I appreciate that. For now, that's all that I got. If you guys got any ones that you guys want to mention that you guys are checking out, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I was hoping to have some new work to share this week, but I didn't have a lot of drawing time. So maybe next week for that new Scarlet Twilight cover. We will see.
Very cool, very cool. And if you guys want to check out any other Kickstarters, please follow me on social media. I'm always posting out about all these different creators that are in the community. They don't even have to pay me to do it.
That's awesome.
I do like the
Well, thank you
for doing this, but I make sure that I help everybody with posting out and all that good stuff too, because that's if you can't, that's the one thing you can do, right? If you cannot help out monetarily,
Oh, yeah.
share or or word of mouth is kind of is the best way possible to get somebody to check out a new book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess with that, the only other thing we want to mention is through Geek Collective, if you are starting a campaign and you're planning out, you can't forget your shipping. We have a deal where you can get 10% off your mailers at Geek Collective 10 or at Gemini Comic Supply.
Cool.
Use the code Geek Collective 10. That makes a difference. Those things, the cost can really get up there. And I'm telling you, people always complain when you try and get away with the folded envelope or the
Please
plastic
use
wrap.
the Gemini mailers.
Don't
Please.
get away with it. It doesn't work.
And I think
People
I saw
know
today on X. I saw the creator of I think Magic Powder. I think they said that they used this 3 different times and it saved their butts.
I saw that.
So very cool. So
Nice.
and listen, guys, use this code. Listen, I want them to see that we're actually using this and it's actually happening, right? So that they can bump it up to 15, right? That would be cool, right? So I want to get you guys a 15% off deal, and so let's make sure that we are using this as much as possible so that we can get that, guys, for you, because this is not this and we do get paid for this because it is an affiliated code. But what we do is we put it right back into the show, right back into the network and the creative studio that we have going on, so that we can continue to do this kind of stuff for you guys, and it kind of funds this show.
I'll be using it. I'll tell you that much.
It saves you money, man.
Gotta
use
use the Gemini mailers, man. You gotta use them.
Yeah.
It's the
you
only
think
way.
you might get away with it, but it's not going to work. People will not only complain, they'll post about it online. It's just not worth it. You got to plan it out. So
I've done both, so I know.
I thought about it, but I ended up when I had to send stuff out, still have a few Gemini mailers, and they also work pretty good for when the sun comes in this window in the middle of the day. I can just throw a couple up there. So I'm getting a lot of use out of that. I think.
And check this out. Like, listen, I'm a guy who backs Kickstarters and I like to get books, right? So I'm okay with you guys reusing the Gemini mailers too. Like, I'd rather you send a reused Gemini mailer than not sending it in a Gemini.
100%, absolutely.
That's how durable them suckers are, man. You can use them over and over again.
Yeah. So just make sure that nobody else's address is on there.
No, that's important. Yeah, you got to do that.
That's the
good tip. Worth saying. Well, I think that is going to do it for us. If you're watching now, thank you. If you're going to watch it later this week, thanks for checking it out. Please go check out some of these great books we talked about, and absolutely go check out the Neverland. I think it's a great new step forward with the Peter Pan mythos, if you're into that. It's got a lot for adults, a lot for kids. And I think this is a really intelligently planned out comic that looks like a lot of fun and gets you everything you want from a story like this. So go check that out and come back next week to see another great book and talk with us about comics. So Caleb, thanks again for coming on. It was great to meet you.
Of course.
And everybody watching, thanks for checking it out. We will see you.